a weekly podcast with co-founders Sonia Noonan and Chris Rankin at Name of the Game. Thank you for tuning in and playing the game with us as we tackle the challenges of business head on and keep score. It's real, it's raw. Are you ready to play the game? Let's get started.
Welcome to Game Day. You're speaking with Chris Rankin and Sonia Noonan from Name of the Game. Welcome, Sonia.
Welcome, Chris.
We've got a very exciting day today. Tell me, Sonia, what are we doing?
Well, Sonia's taking a deep breath, embracing excitement, and we're actually interviewing Dr. Ivan Misner today.
The founder of BNI. How exciting is that?
Yes.
Looking forward to it and all the insights. So for the listeners out there that have been waiting patiently, it's happening. It's happening
Today. So what are we wanting to get out of today, Chris?
I think I really want to know about the middle section of BNI, because we all know how it started and we all kind of know where it's at now and how successful it's been. I'm really intrigued to find out how Ivan navigated the middle area of the business through the tough times and the challenges. And I think that's something that you're keen to hear about as well, Sonia.
Yeah, definitely. How do you grow a business from an idea to 35 years later having 270,000 plus people in your business?
It's very impressive. And even staying motivated for that long, for one. Really, really looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Ivan Misner. Dr. Ivan Misner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization. Founded in 1985, the organization now has over 9,400 chapters throughout every populated continent of the world. Last year alone, BNI generated almost 12.3 million referrals, resulting in $16.7 billion worth of business for its members. Dr. Misner's PhD is from University of Southern California. He's a New York Times best-selling author who has written 24 books, including one of his latest books, Who's in Your Room? He is also a columnist for Entrepreneur.com and has been a university professor as well as a member of the Board of Trustees for the University of Louvain. Called the father of modern networking by CNN and one of the top networking experts by Forbes, Dr. Misner is considered to be one of the world's leading experts on business networking and has been a keynote speaker for major corporations and associations throughout the world. He has been featured in LA Times, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times, as well as numerous TV and radio shows, including CNN, the BBC, and the Today Show on NBC. Among his many awards, he has been named Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross and was recently the recipient of John C. Maxwell Leadership Award. He is also proud to be co-founder of BNI Charitable Foundation. He and his wife, Elizabeth, are now empty nesters with 3 adult children. Oh, and in his spare time, he is also an amateur magician and a black belt in karate. Wow, Ivan, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be on. I appreciate the invitation.
Our pleasure. We were really keen to get some insight on obviously all that impressive stuff that you've achieved in BNI, especially. We're obviously both big fans of BNI. Both have had experience, and Sonia in particular, running a region up in North Queensland with Bernie Hock for BNI. So we just wanted to know from your experience. Obviously, we've seen how successful it's been, but we're really interested in the middle part of business, and in particular, the tough times, Ivan. So obviously, both Sonia and I understand, and probably the listeners that we've had understand that the reason why you started BNI in the first place was obviously to get yourself referrals and Sonia and I have both read your book on that as well, of why you started BNI. So that it makes a lot of sense, and it's probably the majority of the reason why a lot of people join BNI in the first place. But let's like fast forward a little bit, and we just want to know, what were some of the challenges that you sort of had along the way? How did you keep yourself motivated to keep pushing forward as it was growing and all that sort of stuff as well?
Well, that's a great question. And let me say, in terms of challenges, I've earned this gray hair.
Yep.
My father passed away a couple of years ago. He was about 86 years old. He had darker hair than I did. So I earned this gray hair. I am, I've had there were a lot of challenges. I tell people I'm a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah.
It took 20 years to really build the business to be something more than just a job in terms of financially.
Sure.
We're 35 years old now. This is our 35th anniversary, and we've run through many challenges over the years. I mean, the first challenge that I ran into was creating a system, a process that was replicable, and writing it down, teaching people, training people. That's really important. You want to build a scalable business, you got to write everything down.
Yep.
And then you got to learn how to teach people, because education is a leaky bucket process.
Yep.
If Sonia teaches me how to do something and I teach you, Chris, how to do something, water leaks out in each step. When you teach another person, then you end up with a half a bucket of information. And then what happens is people start putting their own stuff in.
Yes.
and it's not, feature creep takes place, and it's not what was created. So creating a system that's replicable, having good training, all of these things are really important in the early days. And so those were some of the challenges that we had, creating a system that worked. BNI's changed over the years. We learned what worked, what didn't work, and we've incorporated those things that did work, and we've thrown out those things that didn't work, which I really find interesting, because a lot of times people will join a BNI group and the first thing they want to do is change stuff.
I haven't noticed that. I know.
You've been around 35 years. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't mess it up. It works pretty well. Follow the program.
And it's had how many people refining it and working on it too over the time. So
Yeah, exactly. We have we've actually just passed 9,500 chapters, more than 70 countries, 272,000 members worldwide.
Nice.
It's amazing. I think the next really big challenge we had was creating an online platform that served members globally, because up until about 9 years ago, it was all paper-based. People would fill out a report, they'd mail it in. It was crazy.
And we all avoided being VP because we didn't want to enter.
What was that, Sonia?
We all avoided being VP, so we didn't have to manually enter everything.
Exactly.
Well, mind you, that Sonia did used to get a bit excited about, look at all the referrals and all the slips.
That's exciting. Yeah. So, we've run through many challenges over the years, but you work through those, and that becomes your tuition for success. Those mistakes that you make along the way become basically the tuition that you pay to be successful.
For sure. Yeah, I guess we kind of, with this podcast, Ivan, we see a lot of the motivational sort of speakers talk about how they started and where they got to in the end. So that's why we really wanted to focus on those tough times, those middle sections of the business. And that's the reason why that question came about, I guess. And so thinking about the scale and how quickly you've got, like, there's some big numbers. What did you do to basically upscale from obviously starting off with an initial chapter with your script that you typed up to be able to get referrals and invite people in? What was it, the catalyst that you sort of did to grow it?
Yes, I'm actually working on a book called Garage to Global. How do you take your business? And I'm probably at least 2 or 3 years away from having that book done.
Sure.
Garage to Global, how do you take your business out of your garage? And BNI started literally in my garage and in a room above my garage. How do you take it from garage and make it a global enterprise? And there are a number of things that I will be talking about in this book. And I've started doing presentations on this, so I'm working all my material on. So let me share some of those with you. The first I've talked about, you got to have systems.
Yes.
You've got to write everything down and create systems. The second thing is, it's like when I say it, it's like one of those bobblehead dolls. People are like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't really know. You've got to set goals.
Yep.
You've got to set goals. These people who say, I don't believe in goals, I believe in objectives, or whatever silly replacement they have, it's crazy. Call it whatever you want. You got to set goals. You cannot hit a target that you're not aiming at.
Yep.
You got to aim.
Yep.
And so let me give you a couple of pieces of advice in terms of setting goals that you may not have heard before. I like the idea of setting 3 levels of goals for the next year. 3 levels. The high level is, I call it dancing on the roof. You achieved it, you need to have a party. You need to throw a party and dance on the roof.
Yep.
The second is your target. That's what you definitely believe you can. It might be a stretch, but you can get there. The third is what I call the floor. If you can't hit that, you may be in the wrong business.
Sure.
You might be in the wrong business if you can't.
That's fair. Yep.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And so set 3 levels of goals. And here's the second part of it. Reverse engineer your goals. So if you have goals for the end of the year, where do you want to be in November? Where do you want to be in October, in September, in August? Reverse engineer it. What people tend to do is they set these goals and then it's April and they go, oh, wait, what were my goals? Oh man, I'm way off.
Yeah.
It's like,
I better get to work.
You got to know your goals, which means you need to know your numbers. So set your goals. You got to know your numbers. I could tell you that as of yesterday, we had 9,503 chapters of BNI, 272,150 members.
Yep.
I get a daily report on how many chapters we have and how many members we have all around the world. So you got to really, really know your numbers. And so that's 2 or 3 of the things. You want a few more?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, so here's another one. I'm a fanatic about time management.
Yep.
You have got to be a really good time manager. And one of the things that I do is my calendar is blocked out by the hour or half hour.
Yep.
But I block everything out, including time to write.
Yep.
This is my block of time to write, including time to think. This is my time to think about a problem. And I block this stuff out. But more importantly, I color code it.
Yeah, cool. Yep.
Outlook has a color code system, and I use Outlook, and so do other platforms. I know other platforms for their calendar have a color code system. I highly recommend you color code your calendar.
Yep.
And I color code it in Outlook. They have the most variations of green. So for green, you know, you're either working on your business or in your business, and the things where I'm working on my business and the things that I'm really passionate about are various variations of green.
Sure.
And so today, I'm no longer running the day-to-day business. I'm sort of the Colonel Sanders of BNI, you know, the spokesman. So I have different variations of green. If it's writing, it's one color of green. If it's doing interviews like this, it's another color. Strategic planning is another color. Doing, you know, interviews, all of these different things are different colors of green.
Sure.
Phone calls are different variations. It was phone call or Skype, different variations of blue, face-to-face. Red's bad.
You don't use red.
Very bad. It usually involves lawyers or accountants. You know, it's the stuff I don't like to do, but you got to do.
Yeah.
Now, here's why color coding it is important. I can look at my calendar and know immediately what my day is like.
Yep.
Is this a day I'm going to be working on it or in it?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
And I can even tell, is this the stuff I love doing or is this the stuff I have to do? Because sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get to do what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But more and more, you should be working your business so that you're doing the things you're passionate about.
How do you handle? Sorry. Ivan. How do you handle?
Let me give you one other piece.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
An entrepreneur, and it ties into the calendar. An entrepreneur is either working in their flame or working in their wax.
Yeah, I like that.
When they're working in their flame, they're on fire, they're excited, they're passionate about what they're doing. When they're working in their wax, it's taking all their energy away.
Yep.
And so all the things that are in my flame are in some variation of green,
Yep.
to the point where I have a real shorthand with my wife. My office, this office here, this what you see in the background is my office. It's a 52-step walk from my house to my office.
Nice.
And
Yep.
I no longer work at headquarters. I work out of my home office in Austin. My wife will, as I leave after breakfast, she'll say, "Do you have a green day today?" And so she knows that
He knows exactly what's happening.
By the way, I have a very green day today.
Good.
This is my third interview of the day, so it's very
Oh,
green.
nice.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
No, the question I had, Ivan, was how do you handle travel? Because obviously you'd be traveling a fair bit, maybe not as much as when you were in operations necessarily.
So you cut out. I missed most of what you said. I heard.
Sorry, how do you
handle the travel?
Travel component? Yeah, what does that look like in your calendar? Because technically it's downtime.
I can't hear you. Sonia I don't know if you can
he
hear me.
wants to know what color the travel is in your calendar and how.
Okay, so that's a great question. I do have travel, and I have it in a different color. It's in a sort of a purple color, which is very unique. It tells me I'm on the road. And I do have a lot of purple on my calendars because to go speaking is in green, but to go speak, I got to travel.
Yes.
I calculated, I have 2.3 million miles on one airline.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So I do a lot of travel.
Yep.
So when you're traveling, is that downtime for you, or is that you're always working?
You know, I get more email done while I'm traveling than any other time, including, waiting. I did a calculation about 2-3 months ago about how much time have I spent waiting in airports, not flying, just waiting in airports. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it would be 9 months in airports.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So I make good use of it. I just do a boatload of emails. And if I run out of emails, which doesn't happen often, then I work on writing projects I have.
Excellent.
So I make good use of my travel.
Yep. Makes sense. You can still hear me okay now, Ivan?
I can hear you now.
Brilliant. Sorry about that. So the next one is we sort of touched on the challenges that you've had, but what was one of them that almost nearly stopped you from moving forward? That almost just sort of brought things to a halt. Like I know that maybe some of them are a bit contentious, but just a bit of insight that somebody small business have those massive roadblocks, and it really go. I think I don't know what to do from here.
Well, my biggest roadblock was one of the things that I talked about earlier on. It's BNI Connect, the system, the online system that replaced all of the handwritten stuff. So, I mean, you'd think, well, that would be easy, but there aren't too many privately held companies that have created an entire social media platform and business systems platform without extensive venture capital or a public organization. And we did not have to go to venture capital. We did not have to go public. We're still a privately held company. And that was really, that pushed the envelope. I had a $1 million line of credit out. To work on that project. And, there were probably some sleepless nights in that process. But the other thing that made it difficult besides the finance was at this time, I made a huge mistake.
Okay.
What I did was I knew that we would need to go everything online. And I also knew that there were a number of countries that had their own online platform that they were just using in that country. What I thought would happen was that the cream would rise to the top, and the best one would be so obvious we would go to it. Yeah, that didn't happen. What happened is each one became a silo. And every country that had one was willing to die on the hill fighting to keep theirs. And getting everyone to say, okay, we'll release ours, create one system that everybody can be on. That was a major part of this gray hair.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, not wanting to concede.
And then when it came out, it wasn't quite what I had promised, and people hated me. And that had to be fixed, and we did. it was ugly, but we fixed it.
Yep. Yep. No, that's fair. That's fair. I can appreciate that. Uh, Part of my world is software development, so I totally get where you're coming from there.
Yeah,
Ivan.
that was not pretty.
Absolutely. So lessons. You've obviously 35 years. This has been going for now. Well, this is the 35th year.
35 years.
Yeah. So, what are some of the lessons, or even your top 3 lessons that you've sort of?
I'll give you as many as I can in a few minutes. Here's, I think, one of the most important lessons for any entrepreneur. You want to be successful in business, do 6 things 1,000 times.
Yep.
Not 1,000 things 6 times. And what I find is that most businesses are doing 1,000 things 6 times. And more importantly, they're constantly chasing. I keep this here because I talk about this a lot. They're constantly chasing bright, shiny objects.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait a minute, let's go try this. And they're always going to some other thing.
Yeah.
Rather than following a tried and true process. We started by me talking about how BNI members will join and then they want to do something different. I don't want to do BNI. I want to do BNI Light or whatever it is that they come up with.
Yeah.
And so you want to be successful, do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. Now, first of all, it doesn't have to be 6. It can be 5. It can be 7.
Yeah, of course.
But and now which ones? Well, what I recommend is that you get mentors who can give you advice. Virtual mentors are good as well. So, like this program, people who come to this program, you can find mentors. So people who maybe see me talking about something, if what I talk about resonates with them, you could find me on YouTube. You can find, I have a blog, ivanmisner.com. You could go to my Facebook page and I got lots of educational content coming out. So use me as a virtual mentor or other people. I've had virtual mentors and real mentors in my life. And you go to them and what 6 things are they talking about? What are they saying is important? And you find some of the stuff that they have, some of the stuff somebody else has. And then if I have any superpower at all as a business person, it would be that I am a dog with a bone. I am the most persistent person around. I know what it is that I want, and I have mentors who agree, and I'm like a dog with a bone. I keep working on it until I get to where I want. BNI Connect, that platform, is a great example.
It's going to happen.
We have people now who say, I cannot believe you used to run this face-to-face. I mean, you run this on paper. BNI Connect is a game changer. But 9 years ago,
different story. No, that makes sense. Thanks, totally.
Right, so you want a couple more?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I have learned over time, ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. Let me explain that.
I like it.
Somebody who's excited about what they're doing is way better than someone who's knowledgeable and not excited. Now, the ideal thing is some knowledge on fire.
But, that would be great.
But if you're a small business, you may not be able to afford knowledge on fire. Right? So I learned when I was a small business, I'd much rather have ignorance on fire. Matter of fact, I am the poster child for ignorance on fire for networking. When I started BNI, I was method acting my way through the networking process. I didn't know how to network. I was 28 years old. I was learning as I went. I put a bunch of people together in that first group. They were all older than me. And I brought them together because I thought they knew how to network. And we sat down and I said, okay, well, what do we do? And they're like, what do you mean?
That's it.
You're the founder. You started this. You're a business consultant. You should know. And so I'm like, okay. So, I was ignorance on fire. I opened 20 chapters in 1 year.
Nice.
And I was method acting my way through it that first year. But I learned and I wrote everything down and I created systems and processes. And that's what got me through. So look for people who are on fire. Think about an employee. I'd rather have somebody who's on fire. They may not be the most knowledgeable, but if they're coachable and on fire, I'd much rather have that than somebody who's really smart, but they're just not real excited. Okay.
Funny you say that, Ivan, because I've always maintained that 90% of it is attitude.
Yeah, really, attitude's so important. I mean, it's aptitude and attitude, but attitude's more important, I think.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you have the ability to learn,
Mm.
if they're coachable, then
True.
it's attitude. So here's another one: culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
Culture is the secret sauce for any successful business.
Yeah.
The thing is, people ask me, how do you create a great organizational culture? And I've never seen anyone else write about it quite the way I have written about it. And you can find it up on my blog, ivanmisner.com. I need to do an article for Entrepreneur on this,
Yeah.
but you can find it up on entrepreneur.com. I think there are a number of steps that lead to a great organizational culture. Here's step one. Look at the processes in your business that are really working.
Yep.
Observe the processes, write them down, which I've talked about over and over, but observe the processes, write them down. Those processes become your organizational traditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The traditions are the things we talk about.
Yep.
Well, I remember when I started being and this happened and that didn't work, and we learned to do this instead, and that worked, and that's why we do what we do. So they're the traditions, they're the stories
Yep.
that make the organization create
Yep.
core values.
Sure.
Processes become traditions. Traditions become core values.
Mm-hmm.
The core values, they truly are the DNA of a business. Healthy core values. So you need to, as a business, you need to come up with a handful of core values, 5, 6, no more than 7 core values, enough that people can remember.
Yeah.
And then you've got to practice those core values. And there's a lot of ways that you do that within an organization. Those steps, processes, traditions, core values, create culture.
Yeah. Yep.
That's how you get to creating an organizational culture. That, plus you have to have a really clear mission statement and a clear vision statement. A vision statement tells you where you want to go. Mission statement tells you how you want to get there.
Yes.
So our vision statement is changing the way the world does business.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we want to go. But I mean, will that happen in my lifetime? I don't know. We're working on it, but that's a big vision. How we want to get there is our mission. In
Yep.
BNI, it's helping people increase each other's business through a structured, positive, supportive referral marketing platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's our mission.
Yep.
And so if you have all that stuff clear and you're training, and it's never too late and it's never too early
Mm-hmm.
to start that process. If you have a company of one, that's you.
Yep.
Start thinking about this stuff. Start thinking about your mission, your vision. Start thinking about some of your core values. Look at the processes that you have. What stories are you telling? And start with just one core value or 2 core values. We started with 1.
Yep.
And that 1 core value led to 7. We have 7 core values in BNI. Mm-hmm. And so these are the things to think about, and you're never too early. And if you're not thinking about it, trust me, your employees are living a core value, but it might not be one you want.
Yeah, that's it. They'll make their own anyway. Yeah.
They're going to make their own anyway. So you might as well help manage that process.
But see, I feel like if you missed that anyway, Ivan, employing people is tough because you kind of want to make sure they're aligning with those core values in the first place.
Yeah. So a couple things to do in hiring people. I'll give you a few things. Hire slow, fire fast.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Harvey Mackay said to me once, Harvey Mackay wrote the book, Swimming with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty, great stuff. Yep. I've gotten to know Harvey over the years, and we had lunch once, and he said, I've lost more sleep, Ivan, over the people I've kept than the people I've fired.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson that came late for me in my career, 20 years into it, where I need to fire faster.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do any good to keep anybody on board that's not doing the job, because they're not happy. They're almost never happy. And I'm not happy. Yeah. So hire slow, fire fast. And when you hire people, train them. In BNI, we actually have what we call boot camp.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in the first 30 days as an employee at Global, you have to go through boot camp, which means you're not even doing the job you were hired to do full time. You may be doing at 1/4 of your time is learning the job. 3/4 of it is meeting with other people in the company to talk about their roles. meeting with directors from all over the world, going to BNI meetings. That's part of boot camp. And the boot camp final is a Skype conversation with me, telling me BNI's core values,
Yeah.
our mission, and our vision. And if you don't know them, you don't pass boot camp, you go back. By the way, I've sent 2 people back where they didn't pass. They had to go back and learn those stuff before we'd let them.
Before they're ready.
And
that
so
makes sense.
train people. Don't just wing it.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more thing about hiring people.
Sure.
You have to learn to delegate, and this is gold. Delegate both responsibility and authority.
Yep.
What tends to happen is people delegate responsibility, but they don't delegate authority. So the person keeps coming. They know that if they're going to do something, they're going to get spanked, emotionally, verbally spanked.
Yep.
And so they come back to the boss for everything.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. Now, you don't give them full responsibility overnight. Give them half responsibility, or I should say authority. You can't give them 100% authority overnight. So you give a part of authority to a learner. But let's say you give them 50%. This half of the stuff you got to come to me for, or you got to go to your boss for. Now, over time, you give them 60%, 70%, 80%. They really should have 95% authority over the area that they're working.
Yep.
And you give that to them over time. And so people say to me, yeah, but don't people make mistakes? So the answer to that is, yeah,
of course.
they're going to make mistakes. But
It's
in
part
the
of
long run, it's better that they make a mistake and they have the authority to make mistake than you're making every decision for them. And that's where the 5% may reside. You can make a decision, any decision within this box up to this dollar amount. And at this dollar amount, you got to come to me, or you got to go to your boss. And so they don't cross that threshold too much. Does that make sense?
It's still boundaries, and you're not abdicating your responsibility.
Yeah, and that boundary really should be the lion's share of the work for somebody who's no longer a learner, but they're now doing the job and they're doing it well.
Yep, that makes total sense.
There's a few.
I like it. If we've got time, I'd just like to go back on one of the items that you were talking about. Going in that first year, you were talking about going from 1 chapter to 20. And I feel like there's probably a few listeners that we have that are in that sort of small business phase, and that's for them, that would be considered exponential growth. So obviously, there would have been a lot of time of yours chewed up in that, but I'm interested to know, how did you leverage off of that to actually be able to grow from that 1 to 20?
Well, I did it all myself the first year. For the most part, I had 2 part-time employees. So the first thing that I did during that year was I created an organization chart towards the end of that year. When I realized that BNI is going to be a lot bigger, I created an organization chart. I had 2 part-time employees and me. So it was the equivalent of 2 full-time people. Oh, and by the way, those 2 part-time employees, one of them also worked for my consulting business.
Gotcha.
So, she did half time for my consulting and half for BNI.
That's okay.
So, because when I started BNI, I was a management consultant. I didn't plan on creating a global organization.
Yep.
Sure.
So one of the things I did was I created an organization chart with 15 positions in it. And in that chart, I put all the positions that I thought we would evolve into over the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
At least 5 years. What I did was I put my name in every box that I was currently doing the work.
Yep.
And I put their name in every box where they were doing the work.
Sure.
And I was in like 11 or 12 of the boxes.
Yep.
And the 2 of them were in like 4.
Yep.
And my plan then was, every time I hire somebody to do one of those functions, I take my name out of the box.
Yep. It makes sense.
And write their name in.
Sure.
And within 5 years, I had all 15 boxes filled out with different names. But here's the rub. I discovered that there were other boxes I didn't think about. So I was still in, I did another chart, and I was still in more than one box.
Yeah.
But that was my vision. I set that goal. That was my vision. That's what I worked towards. Here's the one big mistake I made. I was like so excited. I did it.
Yeah.
And I had scratched it all out. I threw that out.
Oh no.
If you do this, I was 10 years, 15 years into the company, and I was like, did I keep that? I went through all papers. If I had that today, it would be framed
I can imagine.
up
Yeah.
on my wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was ugly. I mean, this was
Yeah.
before PowerPoint, right? It was a
Yep.
hand-drawn
Yep. Yep.
chart. So I didn't have PowerPoint or any kind of graphic program to do it.
Yep. Yep.
It was just a hand-drawn thing, and it's ugly as sin. It was ugly as sin, but
Yep.
I would have that framed. So if you do that suggestion, if you're listening to this, save it, because 5-10 years from now, you look back at it and go, yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah. Yep. That's the catalyst. Yeah. No, I like it. Very
Yep,
good.
very cool. So I just wanted to go back on something you said about your vision is changing the way the world does business. And,
Yeah.
you know, my job up here in North Queensland, I've opened a chapter in a little country town. And when I first went into the country town and talked to them about BNI, they went, oh, we don't work together. We don't do anything together down here. You're not going to be successful down here. And we've launched a chapter down there, and they are just blown away about how business is done differently through BNI. They are so in love with it. It's just amazing to watch. It's just, yeah.
So I remember the first rural chapter that I opened. It was about 2 or 3 years into BNI. It was really rural. It was Kalispell, Montana.
Okay. Yep.
Population was 10,000 people.
Sure.
There were more sheep. There were more goats, mountain goats, than people in Kalispell, Montana, right? And I remember going there, and it was the same experience. They're like, yeah, no, this is weird. And I did the kickoff, right? I did the launch. One of the visitors to this launch raises his hand. I call on him because during the Q&A, I explained what BNI was, open up for Q&A. This guy's name was Rick. And Rick looked over at Jonathan, I think was the name of the director. And Rick said to Jonathan, he didn't even ask me the question. He looked at Jonathan, he said, Jonathan, this is actually what he said. Jonathan, what the hell, why do we have to come to these damn meetings every week? I mean, why don't we got a referral, man, just pick up the phone and call each other. We don't have to come to these meetings. And I'm sitting there going, oh, great, okay. I flew to Kalispell, Montana. I was from Southern California, Montana. So Jonathan was brilliant. He said, Rick, how long have we known each other? So, well, 15 years we've known each other. 15 years. In 15 years, how many referrals have I given you? He said, well, you haven't given me any. I said, in 15 years, how many referrals have you given me? He said, well, I haven't given you any. He said, that's why you got to get here every week.
Yeah, I like it.
And Rick was like, okay, I'm in. And he joined. You know, it helps when you get that local person who gets the vision. And when they get the vision, other people get it.
Yep, definitely.
You talked about the globalization, Ivan, as well, and changing business too with networking. But it would have been exciting, I guess, watching the evolution of globalization around the world and how that's connected, and also having a networking business at the same time doing that, because things would have been changing, and you would have been watching, even just countries dealing with other countries. That all of that would have been changing throughout the 35 years. So that would have been an interesting experience in itself.
Well, I tell you, the technology is what helped make that happen.
Yeah.
When I started BNI, certainly by the third year, the largest line item in my budget, it was the second largest line item. It was the largest after salaries.
Yeah.
Salaries were number one. Yep. The number two line item in my budget was the telephone bill.
Yeah. I remember.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a long distance call was 20 miles away. Yeah. If you were in another state, I started in the US. If you're in another state, that was stupid money. Another country, that's crazy stupid money.
Yeah.
So people wouldn't call me, so I got an 800 number.
Yeah.
Well, who pays the phone call?
Yeah, that's it.
My 800 number phone bill was ginormous.
Yep.
And so, that was 35 years ago, 34 years ago.
Sure.
Here we are today with technology, having a face-to-face interview, online, two-dimensional, but face-to-face interview online, two-dimensional, and it's free.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't cost any. I don't know if you're Zoom, if you have a paid Zoom or a non-paid, but it's basically this call's free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And so the technology has enabled us. I think technology flattens the communication hierarchy.
Mhm.
So it has helped BNI become global because our members can now communicate globally. We can communicate with them. We can do things like this that we couldn't have done 35 years ago. If I'd have started this in 1955 instead of 85, we wouldn't have had the growth that we've had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Not that I was born in 1955. I was born a year later. I was born in 56.
I like it. I like it.
Okay, well, I'm really conscious of the time because we only had you for 45 minutes. So it's now.
I'm good for another 15. I'm good
Well, 'cause I
until
was
the
gonna
bottom
say
of
we
the
could
hour.
like
So
talk.
whatever
Oh,
is.
Sonia would love to. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure. I have another interview in about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, awesome, very cool. So, well, that's great. So one of the things that I wanted to ask is what you talked about when you realized it was going to grow, or so when you started, you obviously had no idea that this was going to go global. That wasn't your
No.
vision. So how did that all fit in and slowly form?
So every year, since I was a pretty young man, I would take a couple of days off to a week off between Christmas and New Year's, and reflect. And I would create my next year plan. What do I want to do next year? Where do I want to be in 5 years? I even had a 10-year plan, and I would do that in that week. And both personal goals and professional goals. I'd also take a look at the previous year and how did I do for my goals. And that year in 1985, I sat down and I was like, what the heck just happened? Because we opened 20 groups of BNI, and that wasn't in my plan at all. I wanted one.
Yeah.
I think BNI is a great example of necessity being the mother of invention.
Yeah.
I went to networking groups that were incredibly mercenary.
Yeah.
And I felt like I needed a shower after I went to them because everyone was trying to insult me.
Yeah.
And I went to groups that were totally social. It was happy hour and hors d'oeuvres, and it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And what I wanted was something that had a business focus, but a relational focus, not a social focus. I mean, I don't need another friend. If I need another friend, I'll buy a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need more friends. I got plenty.
Yep.
So what I wanted to do is merge the relational and the business, and the glue that would hold it together is this philosophy of giver's gain.
Yep.
And so that all kind of gelled for me in that first year. And I realized we also don't teach this in colleges and universities.
Yeah.
We don't teach networking, social capital, emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And so I realized that I needed to start developing material to teach people how to do this because they don't know how. They use networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity, most people.
Yeah.
And they have to learn that you use it to build relationships, not to sell. So that's kind of what I did in that first year. And that was sort of what I was trying to wrap my head around in that first year.
Yep. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I like that because I actually do the same thing around Christmas, New Year. I think a lot of business owners do sit down and
Yeah.
It's just for your benefit, Ivan, the name of the game and our game day, we deliberately called it that because we try to introduce elite sports philosophy into the approach that we sort of have. So we actually have a pre-game, we have quarters or halves, and then we have a bit of downtime in between the halves to review and talk about things, and a post-game. So no different than even the military do that, your fire services. So the idea these guys have spent a lot of time perfecting this sort of these sort of ideas, and drafts, pre-season training, all sorts of things like that. That should be a part of business. And it's very translatable. They are businesses now, the elite sports of the world.
Big business.
They are, and so they are doing the best in that area. So why shouldn't we be doing the same thing? Whether you're a small business or whether you're a large business, it really doesn't matter. That's
right.
sort of, so that's the reason why we sort of came up with this concept in the first place, I guess. So when you're saying some of that stuff, it really resonates and probably confirms what you're talking about. One of the things you talked about with your points, you talked about infrastructure, getting that in place, I guess, to be able to test and measure, knowing your numbers. It's really interesting, especially with the digital space. I've had a lot of exposure to people wanting to do things in the digital space and trying things and go, oh, it doesn't work. And my first question to them is, so how are you tracking that it's working? What are you actually using? What are the metrics? And 99% of the time, they don't have any of the infrastructure in place. They don't have.
And it's about doing things consistently. It's that 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
Correct. So again, that really resonated as well. I totally understand what you're talking about there, knowing your numbers, and actually having them to be able to refer back to and measure against as well.
Yeah, very important. All very important. And that's the way you scale a business, is to do those kinds of things and do them consistently.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Chris and I have worked together since I joined BNI, and one of his biggest things to me is pushing me outside my comfort zone. So what's an example of you doing something that totally terrified you?
So, I've written about this. I've got a blog. If your viewers, listeners want to check it out, ivanmisner.com. And you can find this blog. I forget what the title is, but you can find it if you look in bookstore. I remember the time my first major book came out. It's technically my second book, but my first book sold like 20 copies. So nobody knows what it is.
Yeah.
But it was my first major book, which is, sold hundreds of thousands, and it's done really well. And I remember I was so nervous when I used to do what I euphemistically called drive-by signings. I was from LA, so we call them drive-by signings.
Sure.
That's where if you see a bookstore, you just drop in, and if they have your books, you ask if they, if they'd like you to sign them. So I hadn't done any yet, and I remember driving up to a little bookstore not far from my community, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go in and ask if they have any copies of my books. But then it hit me, well, what if they say no? I mean, that would be so embarrassing, Or if they have my books and they say, no, we don't want you to sign the books. I mean, that'd be really embarrassing. And I almost didn't go in.
Yeah.
And it kind of struck me that we don't have any control over whether someone's going to say yes or no, but we have total control over we're going to try or not try.
Yes.
Yep.
And if you don't try, you'll never know. Mm-hmm. You'll never achieve what you want. But if you do try, you got a shot at getting what you want. And I said, this sounds so simple, but I just didn't want to be embarrassed, No, we don't have any of your books. Who are you? No, you can't sign them. All this stuff's going through my head. Yeah. I finally was like, what the heck? These guys don't know me. Yeah. It was my first book, and I wasn't that big. I didn't have much of a name. And so I went in. Yep. And I looked, and they had 3 copies of my book. I took the 3 copies up front, not in the big thing. Yep. I asked, hey, I'm the author of these books. I noticed you happen to have them here. Would you like me to sign them? Well, that's where I learned. They're like, oh yeah, we would love you to sign your books. Do you want to come in? We'll do a special book signing, whatever you want. And I learned that, you know what, take the risk, because that played off big time. Played off so well, I then stopped in at every bookstore I saw for years. Yep. And just said, hey, would you like me to sign books? And never, not one time, and that was 26 years ago, not one time in all the books I've written has any bookstore said, no, don't sign them.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
So you got to take that chance, got to take that risk. So yeah, everybody. And by the way, I'm still nervous to do stuff. I'm nervous to speak. Yeah. People think, well, I do 150 speaking engagements a year.
Yeah, wow. Yep.
And, but I still get a little nervous.
Yep.
But instead of letting those nerves stop me, I embrace them. Because I've learned that if I embrace that nervousness, I'm actually more on.
Yeah.
On the rare occasions where I'm called and I'm not, don't have time to think about this, and I'm called up and I just go up cold, I'm not as on fire.
Yeah.
As when I'm standing there getting a little nervous. And so I've embraced that nervousness so that when I go up, I use that energy to do a better job.
Makes total sense.
The adrenaline.
It's actually one of Sonia's aspirations, Ivan, is to become a public speaker. So yeah, she's very, very keen to know more about that.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of books written about it. I recommend it, but at some point, if you do it a lot, it does become a little mercenary. You know, you come in, you do your thing, you leave.
Yeah.
I love speaking to BNI groups.
Yeah.
Because it's not so mercenary. You speak
Yeah.
a similar culture.
Yeah.
And there are many organizations that I've spoken at that have been amazing,
Mhm.
but some are just, you know.
You get in, you get it done, and that's
Yeah,
it. And you move on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if, you know, it's good money. If I probably did about 200 free talks though,
Yeah.
before
You got to that
I
point.
ever did my first paid talk.
Mhm.
So one of the things I'd recommend is that you segue into it by doing free talks, get your talk down really well, and then take a stipend.
Yep.
Just a stipend, $500.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then make it a fee, $1,000.
Yep.
And then over time, raise that fee. I mean, I do free talks for BNI, but to organization, I mean, I get paid stupid money
Yeah. Yeah.
now,
Fair.
but I did hundreds of free talks before I ever charged a stipend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, awesome. And my next question is, Chris and I love the accountability part of BNI, and we have that part of game is accountability. Who has been your accountability partner? Who's held you accountable? Is it yourself, or have you had someone?
Well, look, there have been times in my life where I've had an accountability partner on some issue, but the truth is I'm pretty self-driven.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that that works for me is that I make it public.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is my goal.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'll say, here's where we want to go as an organization. Well, now I better perform. If the year comes to an end and I'm nowhere close, then that's embarrassing. And so I'm kind of self-driven to not look like I didn't know what I was doing, or that I came up with some crazy number. And so, but I think the concept of an accountability partner is important. Accountability is absolutely key. It's one of the reasons why in BNI, it's one of our core values.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons we have rules and systems and processes. You know, people, sometimes they don't like the rules, but look, two things about rules and processes. First of all, hockey without rules would be boxing on ice.
Exactly.
Right? You have to, whatever it is, whether it's sports or business or life, there have to be certain rules to play by. And the second thing is that when you apply the rules or the policies in whatever organization, you got to apply them more like Mandela than Attila.
Yeah.
So you apply the rules with, you know, maybe a little bit of tough love, you know, not like a you know, a dictator.
Just
So if you learn how to do that effectively, and there's a lot of ways to do it. I'll show you something. My mother, I'm 63 years old. My mother gave me this when I was 14.
Yep.
It's on my desk to this day. It says, diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way.
Yep.
And she said, son, you're a bull in a china shop. Knock people over. She said, you have to learn how to work with people. And she said, this is all about collaboration, not manipulation, but it's about collaboration. So you have to learn how to work with people. And if you learn how to work with people and apply the rules in a caring way, you can have a success. Accountability is key. Without accountability, it's, you know, certainly a networking group becomes a social group.
Yes. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you do see that
Yeah.
quite often. So
Ivan, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm very conscious of the time and your next interview
Thanks.
you've got. So, but we would just, both Sonia and I would like to say a big thank you. Really appreciate your time and your insight and your expertise. We've had a blast, and hopefully it was fun for you too.
One last
Absolutely.
comment.
Absolutely.
So I really believe that networking is more about farming than it is about hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about cultivating relationships with other business professionals. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yep.
It's a way to build a solid foundation for a long-term successful business. And if that sounds good to you, bni.com. Find out about a chapter near you, bni.com. And tons of free content up on my blog, ivanmisner.com. Check it out. There's a great video today where I get video bombed.
Yeah.
In a video that I did with a good friend of mine, Jordan Adler, and Richard Branson video bombs us.
Of course he does.
He does. It was fun. He just walks by. It's hysterical. He was a good sport. Okay, just between us, we set it up. But he was a great really good.
I like it. I like it.
I seen your tweet about that, but I didn't actually click the video to watch it.
Oh, you got to click on it. It's like less than a minute into it. He does his video bomb.
Yeah, awesome.
Very
cool.
good.
Thank you very much,
Right,
Ivan.
guys. Great talking to you. I'm happy to do recording with you anytime you want.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. That was
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Alrighty. Thank you very much to Dr. Ivan Misner. How do you feel, Sonia? How was that? My thoughts exactly. That was a lot of fun.
That was amazing, and I just didn't want it to end. It was so cool. Do you know what? One of the things that really stuck out to me is that BNI is such a huge organization, and it's still a privately owned organization.
Exactly. There wouldn't be too many out there that could say that they haven't tried to raise capital or go, or at least thought about going public or anything like that, and been in business for nearly 35 years. So, well, it is 35 years now. So,
yeah,
it's very impressive, very impressive. But I'm very humbled and grateful that Ivan gave us his very precious time. So, so thank you, Ivan.
Yes, it was amazing and awesome, and I think I'm going to go back and listen to the recording a few times, and we may even do our next podcast based around some of the stuff he talked about. Like, I'm really conscious that we just spent an hour talking to Ivan Misner, and I want to share all of that with everybody. So we don't really have time to talk about stuff in today's podcast, but maybe our next podcast we will discuss some of the things he brought up.
Correct. No, I like it. How do the people reach out to us and stay in touch?
So nameofthegame.com.au, and Facebook is Name of the Game. Plus you've got all of our individual social medias and websites, etc., which will be all linked into the notes. So
excellent. Thank you, Sonia.
Not a problem. Thanks very much, Chris, and we will talk more about this, digest it all, in our next podcast.
Sounds good. Catch you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.